Good evening, everyone. I always prefer being the last speaker. I know everyone's maybe waiting towards the end and the drinks, so that the anticipation is a little bit shorter. While everyone has been so far talking the more luxurious side of mobility and automobile design, Bentley and JLR, I'm going to talk more the kind of humble and affordable side of mobility. As the title of the talk recommends, my name is Farnaz. I am a senior lecturer in the design department at Brunel University, and I'm also the leader of our inclusive design research group. So before jumping into the concept of mobility, I would like to tell you a little bit about inclusive design and the way we approach it. So this is a not so good quality caricature of the way we look at inclusivity, but I always refer to this slide to talk about inclusive design. What kind of message this collection of images put across to you? When you look at this, what comes to your mind?
Life.
Life.
Diversity.
Thank you.
People are experiencing something that's just once in a life or a couple of times in a life experience.
Fantastic. Diversity. Life experiences. To us, these are what we call the extreme users or the lead users. These are people who are showing and reflecting the diversity, be it cultural, social, physiological, perceptual, emotional. These are what we call our extreme users. And it's really interesting for me, having been in the this sector for a while, to observe how the terminology has changed gradually. In the beginning, we refer to these people as extreme users, people who are at the far ends of the spectrum of the product or service experience for various reasons. Then we started talking about them as lead users, as expert users, and now we actually refer to them as design partners. And I think the way the terminology has evolved is also showing partially and hopefully our approach and attitude towards these people. But anyway, they are central to our work. This is a typical British standard definition of inclusive design. Mainstream product services which are accessible and usable by as many people as possible. Now, within the focus of my work on inclusivity, which is focusing on psychosocial aspects of inclusivity, I kind of challenge this definition because I think we might be missing a couple of words here. We're talking about experiences that are accessible, that are usable, but not necessarily desirable to these people. And within the field of disability, aging, accessibility, this is very common, just focusing on physical aspects of the experience. So a very typical and perhaps boring example of inclusive design. Some of you might know about this, Auxer Good Grips range. The main idea behind this range was the fact that the wife of the company owner, she started developing severe arthritis. She was a very keen chef. She loved spending time in the kitchen and cooking, and because of that, she could not do it anymore. So being the wife of the company owner, they started to develop a range of kitchen utensils which was usable for people with arthritis. Now, it's really interesting. If you go and check Auxer Good Grips website now, there is no whatsoever mention of arthritis, disability, or accessibility. All they're saying is that this is a range of products which is very usable, which is user-friendly, easy to use for everybody because it has been designed or inspired by what we call an extreme user. And I was very tempted to share this experience and this example with you because this is one of my students from last year, Solveiga. You might have heard about the bump mark. It was a few words, and I think the best thing would be to just show very, very quickly a video.
Now, we're all used to seeing these used by dates on the packaging here, but this package of ham also has used by bumps. Now, when the meat is still edible, this bit up here feels smooth, but when it starts to go off, like this one has, this starts to feel bumpy. Now, this has been entered for the James Dyson Design Award. It's already won an award for inclusive design. The inventor is Solveiga Pucksteiter. Solveiga, hi.
Hi.
Now, this idea of accessibility and inclusivity was the inspiration behind these bumpy labels, wasn't it?
I realised that blind people don't have any access to expiry information on their food. So I wanted to create a tactile solution that they could access, but because retailers wouldn't find it enough to change something just for a minority of people, I needed to add added value. So that's when I thought, what's another problem that we have? It's food waste, and how can I reduce that? I've used a natural substance, gelatin, which when you first set it, it's a solid. And you set it over these bumps, and at first you can't feel the bumps because it's rigid, and gelatin, because it's a protein and it's a natural substance, it decays at the same rate as the food inside the package, and then gelatin has this property of when it expires, it turns back into a liquid, which then enables you to run your finger over and feel the bumps underneath, indicating that the food inside the package is also off.
Different food goes off at different speeds, so how do these things know whether they're attached to something that goes off in 2 days and then whether they're attached to something that goes off in 2 weeks?
You can use the exact same formulation, you just need to increase the concentration of the gelatin. So the higher it is, the longer that the formulation will last.
So I guess the point is that if there's a printed use-by date that commits to a certain date, that doesn't actually take into account how the food's been stored, whether it's been stored in a fridge or in a warm cupboard.
Absolutely, and that's not the only problem. We don't know if retailers are actually being honest with the way that they transport and store the food before even hits our fridge. For all we know, a lorry could unload a crate of meat, and it might not go straight into the fridge as it should. And we're trusting the state, which says that it's still safe to eat, and when in fact it might not be.
But I hope that this communicates the very essence of our approach to inclusive design. Look at extreme users. As designers, we always work with constraints, and we hope that this diversity can lead to some sort of innovation then which is useful to everybody. Now, talking about mobility, a big part of my research and work in regards to inclusive design has been focusing on mobility in two major contexts. First of all, public transport, and then second, personal mobility. I would like to start with the public transport example. We were commissioned by Transport for London and a local council to increase diversity of people who use London buses. This was not a kind of social initiative for TfL wanting to be nice to people. It has got a major financial driver behind it. Door-to-door services are oversubscribed, and TfL really needs to see a wider group of people using London buses rather than the specialized services. So the whole idea was to assess the accessibility of public buses and hopefully to increase it. When we were initially briefed at the project, TfL and Hillingdon Council thought that they knew what the problem was. They thought that the problem is ramp technology from one side, and the other problem is that the driver training. The drivers are not that well trained in terms of accessibility. We said, okay, fantastic, but give us a bit of time, let us go and do our research and let's revisit the issues and problems. So we did like what all you guys, good old customer journey mapping. We looked at every stage of the experience, and this is the typical issues that come up, physical issues like pavement condition, shelter, weather, waiting time, curb height, information provision, availability of space, overcrowding. These are the kind of physical issues that came up at different stages. But using a wide range of methods and tools, we also found out that there was another range of issues which were coming up, and these necessarily were not something to do with the physical aspects of your bus experience. Issues like perceptions and understanding of bus travel, your memories and stories of previous journeys, being accompanied, having someone together with you, information provision, passenger attitude, driver attitude, communication between people. And this was really interesting experiences. I remember I myself spent a day in wheelchair, finishing a number of bus journeys, and I would never forget the time where I was there with the researcher who was with me. I was sitting in the wheelchair, he was standing by me, the driver turned back and asked him, where is she getting off? And for a second I thought, okay, I'm sitting in a wheelchair, but it doesn't mean that I'm mute or I cannot comprehend or I cannot communicate. And it was quite interesting experience for myself. So we actually found out that if you want to kind of summarize the issues, they are broken down into physical, psychosocial, and operational issues. The physical issues, the most important ones, getting to bus stop, availability of space and priority of space. As you know, you have the buggy users versus wheelchair users, kind of typical fight, and the ramp technology and reliability. The psychosocial issues are what we call the soft issues, and these are not that easy to address. But we found out at the end of the day, it's these issues that really impact and make the kind of they are the kind of deal breakers in terms of whether you want to use public transport or not. Issues like ambience, awareness, empathy, and communication. And very interestingly enough, operational issues, key performance indicators. We actually found out that the bus drivers receive a very good 1 week disability and accessibility training by demand. Sorry, by scope, the charity. But when it comes to measure the performance of a bus driver, it's all based on how on time you are. So a wheelchair user on the bus stop means maybe 2 or 3 minutes delay. And this is why sometimes we have these very nasty reports of a bus driver forgetting about a wheelchair user. So again, it's quite important to have a kind of overall understanding of the issues. And this takes me to a tool like this. So maybe for some of you who know about inclusive design, this is a quite well researched and what we think thorough tool. Our colleagues in Inclusive Design Center in Cambridge University have developed it. It's called Inclusive Design Toolkit. And if you want to measure how inclusive your product or service is, you will go there and you will use, for example, this tool, Exclusion Calculator, and it will tell you what are the physical, cognitive, and sensory product demands or barriers for the use of the product. However, it doesn't necessarily tell you anything about the psychological or social or ideological experiences that person is going to have, which brings the question of how usable and how useful and how futuristic the tools that we use are. So, using the public transport example, the TfL example, as a kind of a primer to talk about more psychological and social aspects of your mobility, I would now like to move to personal mobility. Some of you might have heard about Motability. It's not JLR or Bentley. Unfortunately, it's a little bit like here, but it actually provides, I would say, invaluable services to a wide range of people in this country. Motability call themselves, I think they are actually, the leading car scheme for disabled people. The way the service works is that you will use your PIP, your personal independent payment, or which was previously DLA, disability allowance, and you will be able to lease a car, a powered wheelchair, or a scooter, or a wheelchair accessible vehicle for 3 years. And they will provide the insurance, they will customize it for you, they will look after it if it needs services, blah, blah. So we were approached by Motability. They wanted us to do a piece of research, scoping their future research priorities. So first of all, looking at how relevant and accessible they are at the moment to their customers, and also trying to find out what are the needs, desires of their customers. And this was the bit that we were quite keen on. Initially, this was the brief that they gave us. But we were quite keen on establishing what are the values, what are the meanings, what are the metaphors for a person who is called disabled and wants to use wants to go through a personal mobility experience. We had a quite wide range of expertise in our team, as you can see. And one of the first things that we did, we came up with a stakeholder model. So these were people from different sectors that we wanted to involve in the research. The biggest part came from their current customers, and as important as current users were as non-users or ex-users, because sometimes they can represent a kind of what we call extreme users, or people who have had the best or the worst experiences. We talk to industry, we talk to government policymakers, and also people who provide mobility services. And the key thing we wanted to find out here was this: what is the context of your mobility experience? What are the meanings behind that? What are the needs, and what are possible futures? And we used a wide range of tools. I know you're all UX designers, so I'm not going to tell you much about contextual inquiry, interview, and a co-design workshop. And these were the kind of people we were working with, all relying heavily on Motability and looking at Motability as some sort of a community that provides them not necessarily with their cars or wheelchairs or scooters, but a service that provides them some sort of a meaning. This is a breakdown of all our participants. We had 102 participants. A wide majority of them, as you can see, were Motability customers and non or ex-users. And of course, other industry professionals or third sector parties. And this was the overall research process that we went through. We focused on different dimensions. There were a few elements that we wanted to explore within the research. I'm going to mainly talk about the lived experience aspect, but we asked people and we tried to observe their lived experiences. We asked them about what kind of preferences they might have in the future. We looked at the interviews, we did a typical thematic analysis, multiple coding, and this is the main and the key finding from the research. This is what we call the values and requirements framework. There are a number of elements that I would like to go through, but knowing how little time we have got, I would just highlight two key elements. First of all is the overall picture. As you can see, in the middle, we have got what we call the stakeholder values. These are based on people's experiences of mobility and what kind of values, what kind of ideals they go through. But based on a number of workshops and analyzing the data with a really wide range of experts, we came up with a kind of continuation of different dimensions. So first of all, you're talking about equipment and facilities. And within that, you're talking about the appearance of equipment, how easily you can personalize it to yourself, the technology available, and sometimes the public facilities, which are not necessarily in line with what this group of people with disability use. The usability aspect, inclusivity aspects, trust, which is playing a major role here, support and service, and finance. And to me, this is one of the highlights of this project and the findings. We could have very easily gone about just reporting on this and not looking at the key values of the people or the stakeholder values. And without that, you would not be able to deliver or look at the different dimensions of the experience. So I would like to go through these values with you quickly, because some of them may not necessarily be as what we expect being non-disabled through our experiences of mobility. Equality and empowerment, freedom, health and fitness, independence, social identity, and security. I would like to provide a quote for each of them, but can you read the quotes? No? So you'll have to bear my loud voice, I'm afraid. Okay, so equality and empowerment. We found out this is really interesting, and I have to say, as the research team, we had to change the word equality. In most cases, when we were interviewing people, people were using the word normality. And we believe that the word normality already has a kind of power suggestion, power structure to it. People just want to feel normal, while perhaps we are referring to the idea of equality here. So this was Elizabeth. She is a driver of adapted car, and what she's saying is that it's empowering because through my chair I can do anything the exact same as anybody else. So it's my game changer. It makes me equal. Again, this not perhaps the type of value we have when we're using our car. Freedom. This one was quite interesting. Your car is your freedom. Your car is your leg. I use a lot of taxis and access to work, and I keep on encouraging people to drive, because not only can you get to work, then you can visit your family. You're not isolated. You can do lots of social activities. I would be lost without my car. When I got out of hospital, my dad had a car sitting there, and I learned how to drive, and that was my freedom. So this is Megan, 38, driver without his car. So again, finding out that to many people, their car or the mobility experience is the experience of their freedom. Independence. I'm a very fiercely independent person. So in fact, after my injury, friends and family wanted me in the local area, and that's not what I wanted. So I went completely somewhere where I was completely away from everybody to make sure that I did everything for myself. It goes back to what I said about the independent side of things. I built everything into my life, A, to be as healthy and fit as I can, to be as normal as I can, to achieve those things. I've bought the various bits of kit to fulfill those two criteria, really. And the idea of independence then takes us to the next value for people, health and fitness. This is a manual chair so that I can wheel it when I want, so I can keep reasonably fit. But then, if I'm carrying shopping, I flick the lever and it's then motorized, so I've got the best of both worlds. It was really interesting. In terms of health and fitness being a value for this group of people, we actually found out that it's not necessarily about the actual health and fitness, it's also about the perception. It's about the perceived health and fitness. Many of these people, even though when they're sitting in their car or in their wheelchair, they're not actually being physically fit or active. But you have the perception of being fit, active out there. And the perception in many cases is as equally valid or as important as the actual experience. Social identity. This one is really interesting. It's a story about a teenager. Someone rang up and said, I've got a newly disabled young guy who has been here for 6 weeks, who won't go out with his scooter because he doesn't want to look like his grandmother. Are there any scooters that look like Vespers? I said, no such thing. There are no trendy scooters. They all look like mobility scooters. And this was a comment from a disability rights advisor, very fiercely later, actually. So again, what happens when your mobility becomes part of your social identity and you absolutely hate the looks of it? I'm not talking about Bentley and JLR, I'm afraid. So there is another dimension from this whole framework that I would like to go to, which is inclusivity, which we broke down into 3 key dimensions. First of all, the typical boring, as Joseph was saying, the kind of physical aspect of the experience, physical aspect. But how about when the metaphysics comes in? So the social inclusion and the psychological inclusion. So these were the 3 dimensions, and I have a couple of quotes from that. So in terms of physical access, this was really interesting. A comment from a person saying, I find most access needs are about space at the end of the day. And like all disabled people, I am the least disabled when I'm at home. Yes, because that is the environment that I control, and it is as near as possible, it's ideal for me. Social inclusion. I really find this quote quite interesting. Ever since I've been able to drive, I just love it. It's one of those few times when I feel I'm on a level playing field with everybody else. Because if I'm sat in my car on the road, on the motorway or wherever, there is no external indication that I have a disability or anything. I'm just another road user. And psychological inclusion. If I plan my journey, they're very helpful. But if I wanted to go on the spur of the moment, it varies as to whether I get enough help. I was once at East Croydon station, stuck on the train, waiting for the ramp, and the train nearly pulled away with me still on it. So again, yes, you might be able to get help, but what if, like everyone else, you decide to go on a journey at the spur of the moment, you still have psychological barriers. So this framework could be looked at from 2 points of view. And we were really keen to look at it from the kind of strategy, policy, disruptive innovation point of view. How? We could refer to this as a framework or as a reference system for decision making for multi-mobility customers. So whenever they want to make a decision, whether they want to choose a mobility solution, whether they want to upgrade it, whatever, they'll always refer to it. You could approach this in the other way as well. They could look at immediate issues, opportunities, and in fact, incremental innovation opportunities that come up. Looking at this framework, we found some issues specifically in regards to equipment and facilities and service provision that could be immediately improved in terms of the experience. So I think at the end of the day, it's about mentality. Are we talking about improving the mere baseline of survival? Are we talking about a basic condition for basic life? Are we talking about the physicality of life versus quality of life? And believe that this is very typical in the world of inclusive design, disability, aging. Are we talking about disenabling experiences? Are we talking about survival versus enjoying? Different versus unique? And condition versus individual? And I think taking this forward, perhaps this is what we need. We need more holistic, human-centric, empathic, and perhaps metaphysical definitions, tools and methods that enable us to capture those elements of the experience, frameworks that enable us to apply them, and case studies where we can share all of this with one another. Thank you very much.